feel so much worse in the morning, please know that you are not alone. It's a really, really common question. I'm Lisa, one of the mental health professionals behind the website What's Your Grief? And today I just want to talk a little bit about why grief can feel really heavy in the morning and why it can be an especially difficult time of day. A lot of times people know that seasons can affect our mood. We hear about seasonal affective disorder, or we talk about how grief triggers might be worse at the holidays or around an anniversary or a birthday that's coming up. But we don't always talk about how time of day can have a really significant impact on mood and on grief. And there's a lot of reasons for it. One is just that even before your loss, even before your grief, you might just not have been a morning person. There's real genetic connections to whether people are morning people or night people. There's something called a chronotype. We all have different chronotypes. At this point, they've pretty much agreed that there are four significant chronotypes. But a couple of those chronotypes mean that some of us, myself included, are not morning people. And that means that your brain is just not necessarily working quite as quickly in the morning. You're not as good at problem solving, at getting motivated, at being able to jump out of bed the way that somebody else might be able to. And so that might mean that mornings have always been a little tougher for you. And then when you layer on top of that, going through a devastating loss, you're dealing with the fact that grief itself can make it a lot harder to be motivated, to problem solve, to be able to get yourself out of bed in the morning. And so mornings can feel doubly hard for you. I think probably one of the biggest things we hear, though, when we talk to people about why grief can feel so heavy in the morning is this really specific moment that many of us have had, sometimes dozens, hundreds, thousands of times, where you wake up first thing in the morning and you have that thought, or maybe it's a lack of thought, maybe is a better way to describe it, but you have that moment where you think that life is the way that it used to be. You think that that person is still there. Maybe you think you're going to turn over and see your partner right there next to you, or you're going to get up and see your kid down the hall, and then all of a sudden you realize that everything has changed and that that person is gone, that your life isn't that life that you had before. And that moment can feel devastating, and it can feel devastating to have happen each and every day. And I think for many of us, that can make the morning feel the weight of that sort of feeling that things are okay, and then that crushing moment when they're not. Can just start the day on a really, really, really hard and heavy note. And so when we move on from that moment, I think all of a sudden we have that day ahead of us, and it can feel really, really overwhelming to feel like we are looking at all of the tasks that we're just not feeling as up to accomplishing as we did before our loss. So you might be feeling really distracted at work. You might be struggling to get yourself to class or to be engaged when you're in class. You might be struggling to just exist in the world and do the things that you used to love to do. And so all of a sudden, just trying to imagine getting through the day feels harder than ever. There's also something that is actually sometimes referred to casually as morning depression. So grief and depression are different, but for many of us, they've been connected. So maybe before your loss happened, you were already struggling with depression, or sometimes grief can actually trigger a bout of depression. And for people experiencing severe depression, having that depression feel worse in the morning is actually a really, really, really common symptom that people often don't talk about. And so you may have found that just the way that your depression manifests in the past or in the present means that mornings are harder for you. So it's all really normal. I think that's the one thing I want to stress. And then a couple of quick tips. I think these are simple, easy little things. We can't, magically solve that morning grief or that heavy depression in the morning, but we can do things to make it easier on ourselves. So some of the things that we recommend: if night is the better time for you, do as much at night as you can to get ready for the morning. So have all your clothes laid out for what you're going to wear so you don't have to think about it. Have your breakfast as prepared and ready as it can possibly be. If you've got one of those coffee pots with a timer, have the timer set so it's already brewing, or at least have the coffee grounds all in there ready to go, and water in there so you can just hit a button when you get up in the morning. So just try to make your morning routine as easy as possible. One thing that I hate and I'm really bad at, but I'm still gonna recommend it, is to try to go to bed and get up at around the same time. I know that's can be really tough, but research shows it definitely helps if you can do it. And it helps if you can get a routine going in the morning, and that doesn't have to be a fancy routine. So it doesn't mean you have to be one of those people who like journals in the morning and spends 2.5 hours getting ready to do yoga and meditate, all those things before work. Like you might not be in a place to be that person. I am not that person. But you can just think of what are the simple basics, the 20 minutes of things that I need to do to be able to kind of get myself going in the morning, and just do them in the same order every single morning. So that way your brain doesn't have to work quite as hard to think about what's next, what am I doing, to get itself organized. It's not working as efficiently quite yet for you anyway, so make it as simple as you possibly can in the morning. I do recommend, though I'm not going to say, be ambitious and journal in the morning if you're not a morning person. If you're not a morning, if your grief is really heavy in the morning, it might not be the best time for you to write. But if you can give it a try and even just do a little bit of gratitude journaling, a couple of things that you're grateful for, it can shift your mindset a bit and get you out of that moment of fixation on our grief itself and just the pain, and say, the grief is here, the pain is there, that's not changing. And there's also some things I'm grateful for, and that can kind of change the tone of your day a little bit. If you can get yourself moving, that's good. Again, this is not like recommending that you dive into an hour of exercise. If your grief is heavy in the morning, that's probably going to be a really hard time to get yourself motivated. But if you can just get yourself to like stretch, walk up and down the stairs a few times, get your body moving, it actually gets some neurochemicals going in your brain that can help to keep you a little bit more alert and motivated and moving in the morning. Get a playlist together, have it saved on your phone, a playlist that's your morning kind of upbeat playlist to get things going. If you have a friend, a buddy, someone else who you know is up in the morning who it makes you happy to talk to, see if you can maybe use them for some texting, quick phone call, somebody to connect with in the morning. If you have someone like that, that can be nice. And then finally, try to be compassionate with yourself. If you are a little bit more of a night person and not a morning person, if you can go with that and not fight that chronotype, can actually help a bit. Some of us don't have the luxury of that. If we have to be at work, first thing at 8 a.m., we've got to be at work first thing at 8 a.m. But if you have some flexibility and maybe can talk to your boss and say, hey, instead of 8 to 5, could I work 9 to 6? Can you move those hours a little bit? That can be something that helps. Or just be generous with yourself. If you're putting undue pressure on yourself because you feel like you're supposed to be up really early, but you're still going to bed late, try to give yourself a little more flexibility. So that said, if you do have the luxury of sleeping in the morning, don't use that as an excuse to oversleep. Try to keep your eye on how many hours you're sleeping. There's that happy balance. We don't want too much sleep, and we don't want not enough sleep. So trying to find somewhere in the middle. So these are just a few thoughts on why that grief might feel heavy in the morning, some things that you may be able to do to just help yourself cope ever so slightly with it. And as always, you can find a lot more information and tips over on whatsyourgrief.com, and you can find us everywhere on social at What's Your Grief.